Welcome, everyone. I am Mary with Twinflower Books, and I'm very pleased to be here today with Mila Velimirovich. Mila is a Minnesota author whose first publication is Orianna's Legacy. Orianna wishes only to strike out on her own, and all plans are dashed one horrific morning when her village is attacked by unknown assailants. The village's most important treasures have been stolen, its children. With no leads, Orianna heads out to find the truth behind the attack and locate the missing children. Mila is near completion of her second book in the series, due out late winter. She's an independently published author and is excited to continue with her writing and happy that she can finally share the rest of her stories with readers like herself. Seeing writing as only a break from reality, Mila was a high school teacher, science teacher at that, and continues to work professionally as a science educator. So welcome, Mila. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So tell us a little bit about how you became a published author.
I guess it all started when I was a little kid and decided to write my own stories in my little notebook and then decided to progress from there. But honestly, it took some time. With a lot of people, my self-confidence in my writing was quite low. My grammar's not great. It will never be good. And so I thought it might be difficult for people to actually enjoy my stories. And that just kept pushing it off and off and off until one day, after teaching my students some science stuff in the classroom, I just decided I keep telling them to follow their dreams. I should follow mine. And I started writing it all out, putting it on the computer, and then sent it off to an editor. And after that, Orianna's Legacy was born.
That's wonderful. Did you enjoy most about Oriana's story?
So what I really like about Orianna is that it's not just an adventure story or her exploring just this kingdom, trying to find the children. It's also about how she grows and learns from it. Um, what I love about Orianna is that she's not a perfect hero. She wants to be, but she has her own issues, just like the rest of us. And throughout the story, she tries to work through them. Can she solve them all? Maybe, maybe not. She's human, so it just is how it is. She also faces a lot of adversity uh, in the books. She's a female in this medieval time period, and she wants to fight and go do battles and things like that. And it's not really looked well upon for a female to be doing that kind of stuff. Yet she still pushes forward. She's still trying to show people that she is just as good as any other male knight out there.
So, as you were writing Oriana's story, what inspired you to share some of her experiences or her approaches to her adventures?
So one thing that I wanted from Orianna and her adventures was for there to be abilities for not just her to grow, but also all the characters in the book to grow. So yes, it's about Orianna, but the side characters also have a big part in the book to play as well. So it's about growth for everyone, not just her. And as the story progresses, my plan is to also bring in the characters more and show more about who they all are. So expanding it beyond Oriana and the other characters that you meet and might actually connect more with.
That's interesting. So, do you find that the characters take on a life of their own and they end up telling their own story, or are you kind of guiding that storytelling?
I try to guide, but what is interesting, they do kind of have to follow their own path. And sometimes I don't want to go that path, but I know that they need to because it just makes more sense. There have been points where I was unsure about the romance in the book because I'm not a huge romantic person, but I knew that there were bits and moments where Oriana was having moments with other people that I didn't think was going to happen, and yet there it was. And it just made sense and it kept the story flowing and going.
Well, so now our romance readers have a reason to get your book.
That's
It's
good.
very intriguing. And I'm kind of curious then, just hearing you talk about the characters and the stories that they're providing or that you're trying to guide. What kind of research do you do when you're thinking about the stories and how much time do you spend researching for the story?
So a lot of the research I do goes with many different things. Oriana's legacy is not in our time period, it's in a medieval time period. And so I try to follow that kind of style. So I have to look up what kind of clothing they wear, what was available to them. One big thing was one of the characters, I had him smoking a pipe, but how does he smoke a pipe in medieval time? So I had to figure a way to have that make sense. So I had to research that for quite some time to figure out how that could possibly work. Other things that I've researched have been like sword fighting, shooting arrows, and things like that. My research history on my computer might seem a little weird because I do also check how wounds happen. So, what would happen if someone sliced you across the stomach? Or where can you get hit with an arrow and not die? Those kind of questions tend to pop up on my Google search because I don't know and I'm trying to figure it out. There was actually one point I was trying to find where someone could get hurt without dying, but can also get heal from it relatively quickly. And I discovered
Hmm,
there's not a lot of places that will heal quickly from a wound. So as I'm writing,
interesting.
yeah, so as I'm writing the story, I have to constantly refer back to, oh, they're in pain right now. There's some blood coming out. Like, so you have to recall this. Uh, but one great thing about a fantasy, especially a young adult fantasy, is you can make it up a little because, magic, right?
Hmm.
You can just throw some magic in there and be like, it's a fantasy world. It's different there. No one bleeds as much in this world or something.
So what was the hardest scene for you to write? Just hearing you talk about what you've had to research. What's the hardest scene you've had to write?
So action scenes have been the hardest for me. You get this amazing story in your head and you see it playing over and over again, and it's so exciting, it's so great. And then you write it down and you have someone read it and you're like, so how was it? They're like, we don't know what happened. So you have to actually work with other people to kind of figure out how to have it, your brain, what's going on there, actually make sense on paper. In fact, I worked with a friend with Legos and we played out the scene with Legos, and she actually helped me make sense of it on paper. And it turned out really well, or at least everyone else now knows what's going on. So that's the whole point.
That's great. So is that one way you balance the need of your readers in your writing? And can you share some other ways that you do that for your readers?
Yeah, so one big thing is having other people read my books and let me know what they think is happening. That's why I'm so grateful. I have editors and proofreaders, and I have also some friends and family that have taken a look at a few scenes for me. There was actually one point I had an 10-page long prologue, and I thought it was perfect. And my editor said, no, you can't have a 10-page prologue. The readers aren't going to be able to handle it. And that was heartbreaking for a writer because you don't want to lose something that you've worked so hard and so long with. But I cut it down, and I cut it down to like 3 pages, 3.5. But I still kept the old prologue, and it's actually on my website. So if anyone's interested in seeing the old prologue, you can always check it out. It is long.
Does writing energize or does it exhaust you?
Both. It can be energizing and exhausting. For me, I need to be in the right mood to write as well. It can be difficult if you've had a long day with your family, with your work, and having to go write a story. It's hard to get into it sometimes, so you have to be on the right mindset. But when you start writing, and things are going well, you do feel this extra boost of energy and you feel like you can keep going for hours. And sometimes you can go for hours. But there are those moments where you're just struggling with the minimalist things. Like, I can't find a way to describe what kind of face this character is making right now, and I am done. Like, I don't want to think about it anymore. But those kind of moments, those tiny little things that might irk you, can cause a little bit of exhaustion.
So is that your writer's block?
Yes. Trying to give those facial descriptions. I know exactly what they look like, but putting it on paper, you'll just be like, that's not good enough. That's not good enough.
It sounds like you might have been on this path of becoming a published author for some time. So if you could tell your younger writing self anything, what would it be?
Don't worry about the grammar. Don't worry about it. That's what editors and proofreaders are for. It's all about creating the story. And the other thing I would tell myself is that the whole point of writing a story should be about sharing it. And the thing is, there will be people who aren't going to like your story, and there will be people that are going to say negative things about it, and that's okay. There will be people that will love your story and will want to read it and more of it and more books and want to know all about Orianna and what she's getting into. And that's what you should be using to keep pushing forward. And that's what I would tell myself. Whether or not I listen, we'll see.
Well, I think that's great advice. As a reader, what book impacted you early in your life?
So I've always been an avid reader since I was a little kid. There will be videos of me pretending to read the encyclopedia that my mom took of me. But what I noticed when I was reading my books, a lot of the main characters were males. You don't see a lot of female male characters except for maybe Nancy Drew, but not a lot in young adult fantasy. And so I kind of felt outcast. And at that point in my life as well, I was also feeling outcast because I was a tomboy. I didn't really go with the other girls to go shopping and doing all that kind of stuff. I was into video games and sports, and I was just like, am I just some weird person? Like, I don't understand. And then all of a sudden I came upon this series. It's called The Song of the Lioness by Tamora Pierce. And it's all about this young woman who doesn't fit in, right? And she wants to be a knight, but that's taboo. You can't be a knight and be a woman. So she actually pretends to be a man in order to become a knight. And you just follow her story as she goes through working through the process of knighthood and eventually kind of saving the kingdom. And it made me so thrilled to finally have a female character that is like me and is showing that you can be whoever you want to be. You just keep pushing forward. Ignore what the naysayers have to say and just believe in yourself and work through it.
So I imagine that's some of what you shared with your students when you were a high school science teacher.
Yeah, that was the big thing. And as a science teacher, a lot of them would tell me, well, I'm not smart enough to do this. I'm not clever enough to do science. And I was like, everyone can do science, and you just got to give it a chance. And that's what I kind of have done with my reading too. I've had people come up to me and say, I don't read books. I'm like, you just haven't found the book that's for you. So you can always try mine and see what happens.
Great advice. Do you hide any secrets in your books that only a few people would understand or find?
I do. So one thing I'll point out is that I always loved the different languages that were in fantasy books, and I wanted to do something like that with my own. But I am nowhere near the ability to create a completely new language. And so I thought instead I want to incorporate languages that we all know or that are in our own world and incorporate it into my book. So there are ways that I've incorporated bits and pieces of different languages, both dead and living languages, into my book. Whether or not you can figure out where they are, that's up to you.
So what's the most interesting language that you brought into your story?
I would say Latin.
Okay,
I've always been fascinated with Latin, probably because of my science background. And so I've kind of thrown it in there in quite a few spots.
very nice. So I want to ask you to pronounce your last name for me again.
Velimirovich.
Thank you. It's a beautiful last name. And I'm sure I won't be the last person to ask you this, but have you ever considered writing under a pseudonym?
So, in a way, I kind of am, and I'm kind of not. So, my full name is Mila Velimirovich Holtz. So, I hyphenated when I got married to my husband, and his last name is Holtz. But when I was creating my book, I took off the Holtz because I wanted to keep the Velimirovich alone to kind of bring some strength to my own name and where I came from and my own culture. So my family are actual immigrants. So they came from Eastern Europe. My mom was from Poland and my dad was from the Czech Republic, and they moved to America. And the one big thing is they were really strong about our name, like how important it was. And so that's what I wanted to also keep on my book, to keep a part of who I am in my book. And so that's why it's Mila Velimirovich. So technically it's a pen name because it isn't my full name. But no, I did have people say you should have done a pen name because it's so long. But it's also very noticeable.
That's right.
People are
And
gonna
it is,
remember it.
and it's beautiful. Once I get it, it just rolls off the tongue. So it's a beautiful last name. So, just one last question for you. Uh, how does your family support your career as a writer?
So my family has been just amazing about the whole thing. My mom has always told me I'm an amazing writer. I used to write stories about songs, and my mom would just love reading them and listening to the music as she read the story. So she was always pushing me, saying, "You're such a good writer. You should do it." But I was like, no, grammar, mom, no. But it was my husband that really pushed me forward to actually go through with the whole process. I was still a little unsure if I wanted to do it. I still had that self-doubt in me. And he just told me, listen, you're never going to know until you do it. So do it. And ever since then, he's been pushing me. And as soon as I told him I wanted to publish, he was like, okay, well, you got to get the book done. And he would ask me every day, like, well, how far are you? How many pages have you done? Well, get back up there, go keep writing. And even now, he's been really supportive. And it's a lot of work being a self-published author because a lot of your sales don't start online. It's all word of mouth. So posting things on social media. So you have to create those media posts. Not only that, but going to events. So I've been going to a lot of local events around here. So that means I'm gone for a full day and he has to take care of the kids the full day. I haven't heard any complaints. So I really appreciate that he's been doing that. And he also posts stuff on his Facebook saying like, "Oh, look at what my wife's doing. Look how great it is." And he actually read my book, so that was great too. But yeah, my whole family, I appreciate them all, and even my extended family have been there. And we actually sent a copy to my family in Poland. Good luck to them because they don't read English. So we'll see. They'll need one of them can read English, so they'll have to do like a whole story around the fire and read it together, I guess. But yeah, I'm very lucky in that way that I have a lot of support from family and friends.
That's wonderful. Well, I want to thank you for being here today. Very excited to bring your book out to Twinflower Books and to spread the word that way. And so thank you for your time and good luck with your next book, which we will look forward to in the late winter, early spring.
Yeah, for sure.